I can work this much for this much improvement. That's what happens after you've gone through it a few times. When you first start editing, you're working this much for this much improvement. That's a fantastic pain to glory ratio. That's what you want. After when you start working, this much for this much improvement, it's time to be done.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a show about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I'm your host, Michael Vadney, and today I'm sitting here with Rosaire Bushey, author of the 30 Stone saga, the Ranger's Deck series, and the recently released Sigil of Enderune. Welcome back to the show, Ro.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Of course. Last time we explored kind of like your author journey, but today we are digging into the topic of self-editing. And when I asked you about like what topic we should do for the second episode, I was curious, why did you suggest that topic?
I, I guess it's one of those things that every author needs to know how to do, regardless of whether they're traditionally published or they're indie published or whatever it is. You even if you're sending it to another editor, you really need to know how to go through it yourself first, just so they're not, you're not spending your money and their time on little things that you probably should have taught yourself.
Oh yeah. That's especially true for like indie authors and stuff like that, trying to save that money because publishing is expensive. Like we were talking about pre-show, the two most expensive things most indie authors spend their money on is the cover, which you do have cheaper alternatives, and editing can be very expensive, so cutting out like the low-hanging fruit is definitely worth your time. So what is your go-to process for self-editing a manuscript before you share it with others?
Well, so I write in Word, and I've tried other things. I've tried Scrivener, I think, before and all that, and I really wanted to love it, but I find Word for me works best. Um, and I'll usually write a chapter at a time. And when I come back the next time, I will kind of reread at least the last page or two of that chapter, right? Kind of pick up where I'm going. And I try not to edit too much as I go, but I will use, if you've ever used Word, and most people have, you can right click and make a comment off to the right. I will write lots of comments to myself. It's like, okay, this needs to go further up in the book or further back in the book or, whatever it is, make sure this person's name is spelled right consistently throughout, especially when you're making up weird names. You know,
As is
I've
typical of fantasy.
right, and I'm sure most people have done it where, and I know I've edited books for other people where, their main guy is Bob in the first few chapters, and then it's Paul later on. It's like, hold on, wait a minute, who's Paul? Um, so that's the way I do it. So when I finish the book and go back to edit, I have with Word, obviously, you have your screen, and then you've got that little bar with all the comments. Well, when you get rid of the last comment, it all opens back up again to a full screen, right? So that's kind of my moment. Is I will go through and look at all those comments, and I will go fix each one of them in order, and then delete them. And when the last one is deleted, the screen opens back up, so you know you're done. And then you kind of like the first pass is finished. Now I can go back and read it again, um, to make sure, and you look for the little red lines and the blue lines. Those help, but they aren't everything because they're still there, and there, and there's still road and road and all those type of things.
So after going through writing your first draft, you leave yourself comments on the way, and these are all the things that you discover like as you're writing. You're like, I don't want to slow down to fix this, but I know it needs to be fixed, and those are the things that you leave comments for.
Oh, I leave comments about everything. Sometimes, yeah, excuse me. Sometimes it'll be something serious like that. It's like, consider taking this whole section out or whatever it is. Sometimes it will be, you need more here, you need to describe this more. That something happens, you did something back in chapter 6 that may you may have just counter um, counteracted here, Um, so, I mean, there's a lot of scrolling involved with Word. So this kind of minimizes some of that scrolling until you get to the editing portion, at least. Otherwise, you're like just your index finger is constantly going back and forth on the little roller thing. Um, so yeah, I'll put all, and when I edit other people's stuff, I will put all kinds of comments there too, like you better not kill this guy, or I really like this person, and this relationship really works. So I'll put good and bad. And the one thing I try to do while editing, especially other people's stuff, is not just say this needs to be X instead of Y, but this needs to be X because, right? This is why I'm making this change. Um, because without it, people always kind of, whether they want to or not, they kind of, it's like, well, who the hell are you, right? Um, so if you can explain why you're doing something, as an editor, I know they don't have to make all the things that I suggest they change, right? They can take none of them if they want, as long as the check clears. That's up to them. Um, but if I explain why, they're much more likely to at least think about it and go, okay, this makes sense, right? Or they can think about it objectively and go, yeah, all right, I get it, but I'm still going to do what I want to do. And that's perfectly fine, right? As long as maybe it will help them the next time they're writing and say, oh, I remember what Rose said last time when I did this. I need to be a little bit more cognizant of um, active voice, or whatever it is. Yeah.
So when after you do that first draft, you've left all your comments and then you go through a pass and address all those comments. Do you then have another pass for yourself editing on your own books? And
Oh,
if
yeah.
so, what do you focus on then?
I mean, by this time you've read it so many times, right? That you're just kind of like, oh, God. If you still like it, great. Um, but I think you're kind of just you're not even really reading it so much at that point. You're kind of looking for mistakes. Having read it and written it and then read it several times, you kind of know what type of things you're looking for. Especially my first book, I realized that I was using a particular word a lot. Not the word a lot, but a particular word quite often. Um, and so I did a search for that word, and I had used it like 91 times or something in the course of the book. And I said, that is just far too much. And so I went searching for that word, and I think I got rid of all but like six, right? Um, and you're looking for things like, am I starting sentences the same way or paragraphs the same way? Am I reusing words within a sentence? Because that's very awkward to read when you have the same word twice very close together. So, and also the adjectives and adverbs kind of thing. Um, is your character's only expression a smile? Is there another word you could use to fit the description of whatever it is? And let's not forget weather. There should be weather.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so,
think the big one for me as I was going through editing was smells and taste. Like I kept in my first draft, I had like almost nothing of either. And I got some beta reader feedback from multiple people going like, hey, you have other senses other than what you see and feel, like use them.
but you're not alone there. I think
Yeah.
most people, when they write, forget about trying to write taste and smell. And those are the strongest senses, especially smell.
Yeah.
You know,
They're so
there
strongly linked to memory too.
exactly right. I mean, if you see a picture of a fresh mown lawn, you can smell that picture.
Yeah.
Right? And there are things that you can hear. Pe- People say you can't hear a picture, but I beg to differ. Um, but yeah, I mean, chocolate chip cookie. Oh, I'm there. I'm there with a chocolate chip cookie. I can taste it. You can smell a
My
brownie
mouth just
baking.
watered a little bit.
Right? So that's certainly not just you. That I think that certainly is me. I forget to do that all the time. But in a fantasy book sometimes though, It's like, well, what are you smelling, right? Blood, 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 you know? Like, well, there's got to be more than that. And how many people really know what a lot of blood smells like? Um, you could, yeah, it probably smells pretty gross,
Yeah.
but um, yeah,
I
there's
wonder if it's because we are so ingrained with now, like, movies are everywhere and TV is everywhere, and those only function through sight and sound.
right.
And is it because we grew up on all this stuff? Do we now think of books and imagine books through mostly imaginary images and imaginary sound? And we don't think about the other senses as much.
No, I think you're probably right. And we live through sight and sound. I mean, walk down the street, street lights, you know, the little dinging to tell you when it's safe to pass or whatever. It's there's the smells and everything. That's very much a home kind of thing. That's something you can get unless you work in my office where there's something in the air conditioning system that just it's horrible. But
We
you
need to
know,
get an AC guy on this quick. Ro
we
is
really
suffering at
do.
work.
Uh, or a mask or something. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I think it's also very difficult to put a smell sometimes into words because you really need a good analogy for it, uh, especially if it's something that someone hasn't smelled before, right? So, I mean, if I'm from Northern Vermont, if I'm talking about the smell of, and this is going to sound bad, but if you know the smell, you know it's not a distant farm putting down manure.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's kind of got that straw smell to it. It's not a bad smell, right?
Yeah.
You would think you're smelling shit. It's a horrible smell. But that's not the case because you're not right on it, right? If you are
It's a
right
very
on it,
rich smell.
right. If you're right on it, then it's gross, right? Or the smell of a skunk. If you've never smelled a skunk before, oh,
That's
right?
hard to describe. It's a very unique scent.
It's kind of sharp and acrid and but it's so you it's hard to think of a smell as being um, disabling,
It's like an
right?
electric battery.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, if a smell can be disabling, it's a skunk up close because you just can't. You can't do anything. Um, and those are very difficult to describe because you don't know. You're depending on what analogy you use. You're expecting a lot out of your reader that they have seen or smelled those things. So for those who haven't, you have to be able to do it. And it's difficult to do. But like you say, taste is, you know, I mean, how many times have you tasted something and it just brought you right back to being an 8-year old at a campground or something? Yeah.
Nostalgic food for sure. My wife and I talk about nostalgic food all the time, where it's just like it's things you don't really eat anymore because like you're an adult and you don't have the same life that you had when you were a child. But every once in a while, you got to pop open those can of SpaghettiOs and relive what it was like to be 10 or 8 or whatever.
Or poor. Um,
Or that.
just a college student. When's the last time you had a Vienna sausage?
Actually, kind of recently.
Really?
Because yes, because I won't say recently as in like the last few weeks, but I think it was like 6 to 8 months ago. I saw them in the grocery store and I'm like, my parents and I used to eat these things all the
Hmm.
time. I'm gonna get them. Do I still like them? Recheck that self. And as soon as I ate that, you're transported back because like we were saying, like memories are so strongly attached to taste and to smell. And just so many childhood memories about
Yeah.
eating Vienna
That
sausages.
the first one out of that can is fantastic, right?
Oh yeah,
And by about the fifth one, you're like, now I know I haven't had these in a decade.
that
It's like
is
that's
exactly what
enough.
happened. That's a
I,
that's a flavor that builds and stays way too long.
I did that a couple of weeks ago with a can of deviled ham. I have not had deviled ham for decades,
Oh wow.
and we used to have deviled ham sandwiches when I was a kid.
Hmm.
So I said, I'll get a can of deviled ham, and oh my God, it's like I do not remember it being just like a big salt lick of potted meat product, you know. Um, yeah, I don't think I ate the whole thing. It was just,
Yeah.
oh,
What you're used to now is very different from what you were used to then.
yeah,
But
yeah.
getting us back on
Sorry,
self-editing,
editing. Yeah,
no worries. That was a good tirade. It made sense. Uh, but something I did want to ask you is, how do you step back and gain that perspective to review your own work objectively before you turn it over to someone else?
I think a good thing to do is just to ignore it for a bit, right? And do something else, um, and then pick it up after, you know, a few weeks and kind of go back to it. You can't have too many eyes on it though, because the quickest way to find a mistake is to publish the book. And you will automatically have somebody call you up and say, "Yeah, you spelt this wrong on page 6." You know, if it's page 250, I don't care. It's like, okay, you know, because honestly, today, and I should care, right? I mean, we know, but if you read the news today, whether in a newspaper or online, you can barely get through a 500-word article these days without finding a mistake of some kind, right? And I think most people are just kind of immune to it now. They just kind of, not to say you should let it happen, anything like that.
Let's
Um,
have better standards, people. I believe in you.
that's right. Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Reading it out loud is a really good way to do it. It takes time, but especially if you're going to have an audiobook made out of it, you catch a lot of things in flow and and pacing and everything when you read it out loud, and you catch some really stilted, sometimes conversation or dialogues, and you realize that you don't always need dialogue tags with everything, especially if there's only a couple of people. You know, once or twice, then they can go several things back and forth and then throw another one in, but you don't need one every sentence, right? He said, she said, Bob said, you know. And you can read it backwards, because when you're reading it backwards, you're just looking at the word. The sentence makes no sense. There's no real context. You're just looking at the words. And that's a great way to find spelling mistakes or whatever it is. And then, of
You don't mean
course,
literally reading it from like right to left. You mean like you read a paragraph as you would normally and then go paragraph above? Is that what you mean?
I mean, read it from the bottom right to the left.
Oh,
Read it backwards.
wow.
Yeah. Because you're just reading words at that point.
Okay.
You know, you're not
Okay.
reading it as a sentence or a story or anything. You're just looking at the words. And you're actually looking at them because you have to go left and then right and then left and then right and then left and then right.
Yeah.
Um,
All these seem like methods to make your story strange to you again, really. To make you a stranger to your story.
they can, but I mean, you're really just looking for any little trick you can to try to find these mistakes that might be in there. Um, Word is a great thing because I keep generally a list of words as I'm writing. I will make like a little list of words that it's like, okay, I need to be careful with this word because I keep spelling it wrong, right? Or, you know, and then all the there's, road kind of things. Just do a search for them in Word, and it will pull up all ROADs and then all RODEs, and you can make sure you have the right one every time in the sentence, right? And you can at least get through those obvious ones, right? Um, and your place names. That's the other nice thing about Microsoft Word, and I'm sure it's with a lot of other things as well, is that you can add words to the dictionary, right? So if you have a place name or a person's name, you can add it to the dictionary in Word, and then if you spell it wrong, it'll come up with a little red squiggle because that's not the way it's supposed to be. So
No, that
those
makes sense.
those
I do
tools
like
help a
those
lot.
custom dictionaries. They're very helpful,
Oh God, yeah, yeah, yeah. When I
especially in like fantasy and sci-fi and such.
Yeah, when I edit other people's stuff, I'm always like add to dictionary, you know, just because I don't know these characters the way they know them, and I don't want to have to go scroll back through 100 pages to make sure they got that person's name right every time. So I'm
Yeah.
going to assume that the first time is the right way. And if I see it, if I do see it a different way, then I'll put a comment off to the side for them and say, okay, you've now spelt this name three different ways. And I don't care which one you pick, but just pick one,
Yep.
right? It's like consistency is everything. You can be wrong as long as you're wrong the same way every time. Then you're fine. You can just say, that's my style. It's like, okie dokie.
There you go. So that actually rolls into my next question really well. How do you balance maintaining your unique voice while making edits for clarity and flow? Because there is a lot to do with like grammar. There is a right way to do it, but you don't want to kind of stymie this unique voice that you're trying to cultivate or that you just naturally put onto the page just by you actually writing.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like the character's voice,
More like the voice of the narrator. Like if you wrote a story and I wrote the same story, it's not going to sound the same,
right?
but you can beat it into the same voice through over editing and like fixing the grammar to be exactly this. And I'm wondering, how do you balance those choices? Like you were saying, you can be wrong, just be wrong the same way every time to create that voice. How do you make that balance, that choice?
I think it's a matter of just looking at how it is in the story and what works best for the story. The wonderful thing about English grammar rules is every one of them has a dozen exceptions, right? I mean, how many times growing up have you heard I before E? Yeah, right, whatever, you know. Um, and even the AP style book, or, and if you look at the AP style book and the Chicago Manual of Style and the other one, they're going to have different things for the same thing, right? One does it one way, and anybody who's been to college, that's, especially if you start going to get like graduate degrees, that's first thing you ask is, what style book do you use? It's like, oh, we use this bizarre one. It's like, no thanks. Um, yeah, just be true to the story, I think, and not. Most readers are going to be really forgiving about that, and I think most readers are going to kind of read it in their own voice anyway. Um, they'll have their own kind of cadence that they read to. I'm very when I write, commas and periods actually have a reason for being, right? It's like this is like a little pause and this is a breath, right? And I know there are people, my wife just goes, she just reads really fast and doesn't read every word. And that drives me insane. I have to read every word, but she doesn't. And because she doesn't, she misses some stuff that kind of gets past her, but she gets the general idea of a story and moves on, and she's not that bothered by it. So people have different ways of reading. I think as long as you're consistent, because when you're not consistent, that will bother pretty much every reader. They will notice those inconsistencies and that will throw them off. And that's another good reason to read it out loud, especially if you're going to be doing an audiobook, is to have that, it's like, why are they talking this way here and very different. You gave them a Scottish accent in the first chapter and then it just went away. What happened?
Yeah. So it sounds like it's better to be consistent than it is to be correct.
I think so. I'm
Okay.
sure there are people who are going to disagree with me, right? But such is the vagaries of the English language and editing, and that's fine.
Well, today I'm talking to you. So right now you are the authority in this
That's
room
right.
for all two
You're,
for
you're
all
going to
two of us.
be wrong the same way every time.
There we go. You heard it here, people. So, what specific techniques do you use to catch like plot holes and inconsistencies in the story itself? Is that just naturally bubbling to the top as you reread it every time as you go through, or is there a certain technique that you use?
You've heard people say be attentive when you read. I think that's what it is. You can't, I mean, sometimes you'll just find it just reading it, right? You'll just kind of realize, but really when you're editing, you need to be thinking about it. It's like, okay, I am now going to look for making sure this all makes sense as a plot, right? So I'm going to be looking for, what things are the characters doing, where are they going, you know, what are they working toward, and does it all make sense, and are there any big gaps? But you have to consciously think about that as you're reading it, looking for those things, which is why you have to do several passes because you can't look for everything all at once, right? So get the spelling and the grammar kind of stuff out of the way. Do that first, then go through and start looking for the other holes. And if you find them, then you have to do rewrites, which means then you have to do the whole process again.
which can be rough. I went through, I think, 5 passes, like 5 major passes, not even including like the small ones, before I sent off my book to my editor, which is that's where it is right now. Um, and every one of them, I felt like the story just drastically changed and improved because there is just so much to do every pass. You can't do everything. You'll get bogged down in too many of the details if you try.
And I think that's probably where a lot of first time authors get stuck, right? It's like, it's got to be perfect. No, it doesn't. Because it's never going to be, right? It's just never going to be perfect. And you can talk to a musician who's been, selling millions of records. They can go back to their early stuff and say, well, I wish I would have done X, Y, or Z, or, hadn't used the flugelhorn there or whatever it is. And um, it's the same way with writing. You're going to learn and progress. Don't worry too much about the stuff you've done before. But that is a weird part about writing, though. People expect, it's like, well, this isn't that good. Well, it's your first book. So that's kind of something that I think we got to train readers to a little bit, right? It's like you can't expect greatness the first time out. Every now and then someone hits it out of the park, right? And they have that moment. When what is the kid's name? He's not a kid now. The one who did
Polini?
Aragon. Yeah,
Yeah, Polini.
right. So when that came out, it's like, oh, this is pretty good, right? And then the kid, he was like 16 or something.
Yeah, he was super young. He wrote it when he was in high school.
Yeah, I went back and read it, tried to read it again fairly recently, and it
Yeah,
just wasn't happening. It's like I
yeah,
remember reading this book and kind of liking it at one point, but now I look at it and it's like, no. So
yeah. I was in high school when it came out, and like I loved it. Like I'm about his age, and so when he wrote it, it was like it was for written by a teenager for teenagers.
yeah,
And I remember it being sensational. But I've also heard a lot about people going back to it and just going like, it's okay, it's a story. But I kind of read debut novels with a different mindset than I do other novels.
yeah, you should, you know.
Yeah,
I guess there's a school of thought that says you shouldn't, right? If it's published, it should be. I shouldn't have to worry about whether or not it's your first or your 10th. Um, but there will be a difference because you've just gotten better at your craft with practice. Just, a blacksmith, his, 10-year item is going to be much better than his first-year item.
no, that
So,
makes complete sense. And that doesn't mean the first one is bad. It just means they've had more experience. They've had more exposure to different types of things and different types of skills and techniques, and they can get that all done.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've mentioned Microsoft Word a lot. Are there other software tools that you use to assist yourself to make the editing process more smoother or more efficient?
Nope.
All right.
There's not. I mean, I know there are some out there that people swear
Mhm.
by, and I think it's one of those things. And I've tried a couple of them. Um, whether it's just, get off my lawn, I can't be bothered to learn it, or it
Yeah.
doesn't do exactly what I wanted it to do. Uh, I think whatever you're comfortable with that you can use to do what you need to do the best you can do it, use that thing, and if it takes two or three different things to get everything done for you, then do that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why all those tools exist. Um, the, You ever listen to Joanna Penn?
The name is super familiar.
British author. She's had a podcast for like 10 years, does all kinds of stuff. Really good podcast, Creative Penn, two N's.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, she uses several different items that she uses to edit before sending it to her editor. And
Hmm.
and her spiel of it is, I want my human editor to focus on the things that a human will pick up, right? Rather than waste their time with the stuff that, you know, this program can sort out for me. Um,
No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's kind of what we're talking about with self-editing in general. Is you need to clear up the things that you can catch, so you're not wasting your editor's time. Because if they have to catch those things, they might not catch the more important things that you won't.
right. And there are different types of editors too, right? I mean, there are,
Yeah.
I consider myself kind of like a line it. Nah, nah, well, I have a hard time because I do a lot of different things. Um, I will
Hmm.
do the spelling and grammar and all that kind of stuff. But I will also look at story and all that. But there are people who specialize in story editing, right? And there are people who specialize in line editing, and whatever
I,
you need. That's
I've
you
heard
get
of several varieties in between as well.
yeah.
I feel like every time I look up editing, I need to remind myself what are the varieties because there are so many.
There really are. But I mean, some people might only want a developmental editor, or a
Hmm.
story editor. They might just be having a difficult time with, getting, they have a great idea for a story, but they can't quite put the last piece or the middle piece together that's going to give it that kick that it needs. And a developmental editor then is there to kind of sit there and go, well, this is what you need to do. Um, and that's not me, but those people would be a great benefit. So yeah, it's something else for writers to be able to spend their money on.
Yeah.
And
So,
the
oh, go
great
ahead.
thing about having a traditional publisher, I guess, is that they'll have people doing all that for you, which is probably
That
why
is
it takes
true. You
so
just
long
have
to get
to, exchange your soul and all creative control.
exactly.
Hey, it is a great route for some people, as we talked about in the last episode. Um, but what's your approach then for revising dialogue? Because I feel like that's an area that a lot of people really struggle to make sure that it sounds natural and authentic. What is your technique for making sure that happens through the editing?
Well, see, I grew up writing for news, right? For newspapers, military newspapers. So we would always use a lot of quotes. So I've always kind of used dialogue in stories. It's something people said or something they should say. Um, I don't actually change a lot of that. So I've never really thought about that. But I mean, looking at it, it it can't be too campy and it has to fit the situation, right? So if you've got a character who is generally curmudgeonly or something, and all of a sudden he's hosting a surprise party, that's a big shift for that person. You need to set that up beforehand, right? You never see Oscar the Grouch, right, doing the happy-go-lucky kind of songs. He has his thing because that's what he sounds like and that's his voice. Um, so yeah, I guess you do have to be careful about that, and you don't want to slide too much into trope or kind of that saccharine kind of um, forsooth with kind of nonsense, unless your character is a paladin who talks like that. And if they always talk like that, great. I have a character in my Rangers deck series who does not use contractions, and it's a giant pain in the ass because you write with contractions. But I always have to catch myself and go, I have to go back and look at all of his dialogue now because I'm 8 chapters into this thing and I've totally forgotten that this guy doesn't talk in contractions, and I need to make sure that he didn't do it, right? Or if he does do it, it has to be very specifically done, and then another character needs to make mention of it, right? So I mean, if you've ever watched Star Trek the original series, go back and watch that and pay attention. Does Spock use contractions? I think every now and then he slips, but he's not supposed to,
Yeah,
right?
I'm going through Next Generation right now. I didn't grow up watching Star Trek. My wife did, and she's introduced me to it now as an adult. And I'm the Next Generation is the second series I've ever done. And this whole time you're talking about dialogue and contractions and stuff like that, I'm thinking of Data,
Data, right?
who typically does not use contractions.
Correct.
And every once in a while he does, and it's always a sign of something's wrong, something's different. What's
Right.
happening, Data?
Or he's got this, Noonien Sun chip in his head or something that, you know, um, Deep Space Nine should be your next watch.
That's I think it's going to be because like chronologically, I've gone out of order. I started with Star Trek Voyager,
Ugh.
which I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. How dare you? But I like Next Generation a lot too. I like them both, but they are very different.
Yeah. Um,
Like, but the chronological order is the original series, Next Generation, and then Deep Space Nine happens, and then Voyager, because the beginning of Voyager takes place at Deep Space Nine.
yeah. Yeah. Deep Space Nine, to be fair, really doesn't get super good until like season 3 or 4.
Oh, that's rough for me.
The first season is okay because you're getting to know the characters and the space station and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
They're okay, but it really finds its way around season 3 or 4, and then it starts to get a little grittier at that point.
it sounds
It,
like they needed more self editing in those
it
first 3 seasons.
it's worth the watch. And
I'll try. I'm definitely going to try.
they were doing something new. I mean, they weren't moving, right? They were in a space station that stayed still.
No,
Um,
that makes yeah. Everything has to move to them now.
I'll tell you this that will make you want to. They do weaponize that space station, and it kicks ass. It's awesome.
All right, maybe
Anyway,
that will buoy me through the first rough seasons because the first season of Next Generation is rough. Like, we got to the end of season one, and I turned to my wife and I said, "If season two is like this, I'm not going to keep watching this show."
yeah.
But season two immediately turned it around for Next Generation. It was much better. Picard was no longer a stuck-up buffoon. All the characters just got better and more consistent.
And they introduced some of the best characters in Star Trek. Q is one of the best characters ever.
I like
Um,
Q too.
there's a show called Picard on Paramount now.
Yes, there is.
Look
I
up,
will eventually get to it.
that's really good. It's only like 3 seasons of it, I think, but it's quite good.
Nice.
And Q
Yeah,
comes
I need
back in
to
one of
make my
those
way through
seasons
the
too.
originals.
You got a lot. You got a lot to go through then.
Yeah, it's been a long journey already. I'm only on the second iteration. I got a while to go. So, what would you say is the biggest, like getting us back on topic, the biggest self-editing mistake you've made, and what did you learn from it?
It's not so much an editing mistake as it is a writing mistake, um, and that's passive voice. And it's just one of those things that once you realize it, you start seeing it everywhere. Um, and it's easy enough to fix, but I think we're so used to hearing it and speaking almost in a passive voice that it just looks right and it feels right and it sounds right. But when you make the change, it sounds so much better, and and when I edit, I do some editing work for other people, and I see that a lot, and I keep commenting on it. It's like, man, I am going to get you not doing this anymore. Um, and it doesn't generally take more than a word or two substitution. It's just, you know, he could have done, why don't you just say he did, or whatever it is. Um, and it's a real easy change to make that makes an enormous difference because it's very active and it keeps things flowing. Um, but that's the biggest thing.
Do you have any advice on like how people can identify passive voice?
Had I actually like bothered to make a couple of examples, I would give them to you. But I mean, just go to Google and look up examples of passive voice, and you'll once you see it, you will kind of go, oh yeah, I get it. It's not one of those obscure kind of grammar things that only 1 in 50 people get when they start throwing grammar words out to you. Um, I have masters in English. I don't know grammar words. Um, but it's one of those things that you can see very easily and identify and just kind of go, right, I can fix this. This is fine. But you have to, but again, like I was saying before, you have to go looking for it because if you're not, you'll just breeze right over it. So that's why you have to make several passes with intention um, to look for a certain thing and just do that one certain thing and go through it. It takes a long time, but it makes it better.
No, that makes a lot of sense. How many passes do you typically do of self editing?
I mean, if I write by hand, which I did a little bit in Sigil, I wrote probably about 30,000 words of that with a pen. Um, that you kind of do a little bit of editing while you're writing, right? Because you're doing it slower. And then you do another little passive editing when you transfer it onto a computer because you're retyping it again. You're like, oh, that worked. That doesn't work. Um, but probably, God, I mean, it probably read through it 3 to 5 times.
That's a pretty good
Um,
set. Like I feel like that aligns with a lot with what I've been hearing around with people too. Is like people do vary, and there are some people who I've heard like horror stories of them going through their story like 10 times because it just changes so much every time. But three to
yeah,
five sounds like pretty standard.
I mean, because I've been doing this, I mean, writing in some form or another since I was 18,
Hmm.
um, I write pretty clean generally. My first draft is generally pretty clean. Um, Sigil was the first time I've ever had to go back and just rip out a large chunk of story, which was painful. But
Oh,
I have never rewritten anything that wasn't much better after it had been rewritten. I mean, sometimes that comes from, forgetting to save it on your computer and your computer dies and you've lost everything and you have to redo the whole thing. Um,
speaking from experience, it
oh,
sounds.
oh yeah, that's happened
Oh,
at least once. Um, but when you redo it, because you've done it once already, you kind of know what the flow is, and then whatever new information you've picked up since then, and you can put it back together, and it's always better. So
nice. So final question then that I want to ask you for this evening is how do you know when your manuscript is polished enough from your own self-editing to give it off to beta readers or someone else to edit? How do you know when it's ready to hand off?
when you can no longer stand the look of it, you're just so absolutely sick of the damn thing. You
Yeah, tell
you
me more
you
about that.
you will do anything to get it away from your desk and out of your eyesight. I mean, you can only read something so often, right? I mean, there's a limit. And after a few times, you can read it another 10 times if you want. You're not going to see anything unless it's a total accident, just because I mean, you've already written it and rewritten it and edited it, and now you're looking for things. You're just, it's like, oh, yeah, this is what's happening now. Okay. And you're not even really reading it at that point. You're just kind of glossing over it and you're thinking about other things. And when you get to that point, just give it to somebody else.
No, that's great advice. Like at that point, you're not really being productive anymore.
Exactly, exactly. And it's one of those things too. It's like I can work this much for this much improvement, right? That's
Hmm.
what happens after you've gone through it a few times. When you first start editing, you're working this much for this much improvement, and that's a fantastic pain to glory ratio, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want. After when you start working, this much for this much improvement, it's time to be done.
Oh, that's sound advice. And a good place to really wrap up this episode. Ro, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
Can you tell the
appreciate you having me.
people, yeah, can you tell the people where can they find you? Where can they find your books?
You can find me. The best place to go is my link tree. So it's linktr.ee/ro bushy, or on Substack at Bushy, or X at Bushy.
Yeah, and we'll have all of those linked below. But where can they find your books?
Amazon. Everything's on Amazon, and that's
Excellent.
the only place it is.
That's fine. We will have all of those linked down below. Again, Ro, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
All right, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Of course. And folks, until next time, remember, let's be author adjacent together. See you, folks. All right, we did it. We survived.